how do you actually build a relationship? How do you define it?
If you and I have a great relationship, you and I have a really strong relationship, that's awesome. We should have that. But if other people on the team feel like we're a clique and they're outside of it, that's not good. That's not good for relationship building. And that causes silos, and that could be a problem.
What are the things that I need to do to actually build a strong relationship?
What's the barrier to me listening to you? What's the barrier to me being influenced by you? What's the barrier to me respecting, your opinion?
Topic for today, relationships. The power of relationships, why it's so important that we prioritize maintaining and building strong relationships, and also the things that we need to think about when it comes to relationships and the potential pitfalls we might fall into when we overestimate our relationships.
This is a great topic because I think it's one that people struggle with. They don't understand that relationships are paramount. They don't understand that whether or not you succeed or fail in life, in business, in so many things that you're trying to do, it's all based on relationships. And I think some people think that they're doing a good job if they get, if they achieve their KPIs, if they, whatever measures of success they have for themselves, they're getting things done, but they don't get along with other people. They can't actually work alongside other people. They can't support other people or get the support that they need. And if you do that, you're just not an effective teammate. And if you can't be part of a team, then you can't be successful at anything that you're trying to do.
It's the foundation to everything. We teach the 4 laws of combat at Echelon Front. The first one being cover and move. And that's the idea around teamwork and working together. And the tool we tell everyone is that in order to properly support one another as a team, you have to have strong relationships up the chain, down the chain, and across the chain of command. And to your point, so many people do not prioritize that in the right way. And it's the foundation to everything.
And this is something that I just think it's in our human nature. It's our human nature to focus on ourselves, whatever problems that we're dealing with, whatever things that we actually have to get done. That's the most important thing in the entire world. I remember a conversation I had with my son when he first started playing flag football. And, his team scored a touchdown. And I was like, great job, son. You did great. Because he took like a fake handoff, and then there was a pass thrown, and the receiver caught it, and they scored a touchdown. I was like, great job, son. That was awesome. He's like, I didn't do anything, Dad. I didn't score the touchdown. And it was a great opportunity for me to teach him that, like, actually, you took a fake handoff, you sold that fake handoff, the defense bought on that, and that's what opened up the receiver, enabled your quarterback to make an accurate throw and score. And it was a good lesson to talk about. Like, you don't have to be the one who's actually scoring the touchdown. You contributed to the team winning, and when the team wins, everybody wins. And so I think it's something that's just in our nature that we focus on ourselves. If my son's thinking, if I don't score the touchdown, well, how did I really help the team? But this touchdown doesn't get scored unless, he takes the fake handoff and he sells that to the defense, and the defense bites on that. And that opens up the whole play and enables the team to win. And so I think to really understand this concept of cover and move, which is all based on the power of relationships, it really just means it's not about you. It's about the overall team and the overall mission. And I don't think there's any more insult that you could tell me or someone that I serve with in the SEAL teams that they're out for themselves, right? They're not a team player. In the SEAL teams, we call ourselves team guys. And when you talk about, like, what does a good SEAL look like? It's someone who puts the mission and the team before themselves.
And not just team guys. When Flynn refers to his teammates, he refers to them as his brothers. I always thought that was really interesting. On the backside of that, watching him interact with his teammates, the bond that you guys built and the relationships you built was so critical because you relied on each other in a really chaotic environment in combat when you guys were out on deployment and needed to rely and know that your buddy to your left or your right is going to cover for you. I always loved that about the teams, that they called each other brothers. This is my brother. I think it signifies the power of relationships in that environment.
No question. Obviously, this doesn't just apply in the military or in a unit like the SEAL teams, but it applies everywhere. I know this is something that helped us get through some very challenging times. I know this has been kind of a guiding principle for you and the rest of the team at Echelon Front, is that relationships are paramount.
I think what is hard for people, and we see this when we go on site with clients, we go into a workshop scenario or a training, and we'll ask people, hey, what is a relationship? And people really struggle to define what a relationship is. They understand it. We all know, like, yeah, we've got to have a good relationship, but how do you actually build a relationship? How do you define it? And I think that's really important to understand. What are the things that I need to do to actually build a strong relationship? That piece is difficult, and we've come up with a framework for that.
And the framework is trust, listen, respect, influence, and care. That's what a relationship is. And, the first time I heard Jocko say that and kind of talk about this, it all made sense. And as you say, people really struggle with this because we'll have leaders that say, hey, I'm trying to push an idea up the chain of command that I think would be a really great opportunity for us, but no one's really listening to me. And so then we say, well, what kind of relationship do you have with your chain of command? And they say, oh, a good one. And what they mean by that is like, hey, we say hi to each other. We're not unfriendly to each other, but that doesn't define a relationship. What really defines a relationship is those 5 things: trust, listen, respect, influence, and care. If you and I don't trust each other, we don't have a relationship. We certainly don't have a good relationship, right? If you and I don't listen to each other, we don't have a good relationship. If we don't respect each other, we don't have a good relationship. And if you don't have the ability to influence me, I don't have the ability to influence you, particularly for the good of each other and the good of the team. That's the kind of influence that we're talking about here. Then we're not going to be successful. We don't have a good relationship. And then ultimately, if we don't care about each other, if you know that I care about you, you're much more willing to listen to me, right? You understand that I care about you. I want you to succeed. And the same thing, in the other direction as well. So every relationship has to be based on those 5 things. And if you don't have those 5 things, then you don't have a relationship. You don't have a good relationship with people. And the interesting thing is that in order to get them from people, you can't demand them. What you actually have to do is give them.
Yeah, these things are reciprocal. And I think that's the difficult thing for people to figure out initially. But also, when you break it down, that's what actually gives you control over your ability to build this relationship, is recognizing that these things are reciprocal. In order for me to get you to trust me, I have to be the one to show you that I trust you. It starts with the actions that I take to show you that I trust with you. It starts with me listening to your ideas and taking on board your perspective and your opinion. It starts with me allowing you to influence me and allowing myself to be influenced by your ideas. It starts with me showing you that I respect you. I think a lot of people have this, this person needs to earn my respect. And the way we teach building a relationship is it starts with you showing someone that you respect them. And then caring for them, I think it's really important for people to understand that a good relationship doesn't mean that you and I hang out on the weekend and we barbecue with our family and we know everything about each other's past. It's not this best friend scenario we're looking for. What we're talking about is you can have a relationship with someone you don't even really like if the purpose of it is that I care about you and I care about your success, because that's what's going to allow us to accomplish the mission. And we can have trust, we can listen to each other, we can influence one another, we can care about one another, even if we don't have this deep relationship outside of our working environment.
Yeah, I think you don't necessarily have to have the personal connection, right? And there's people that you may have a better personal connection with than others. I think that's what you mean when you say someone you don't like, right? And that's you may not be the BFF with this person, but you certainly can have all 5 of those things and work together, very effectively. I think we're always going to have humans that we're closer to than others. We have some connection with than others. But generally, if you're digging into someone that you may truly not like and not want to work alongside, it's because those things are lacking, right? Those things are deeply lacking. And what's interesting is that we've seen in very frictional relationships where people don't get along at all. When we talk to people about the power of relationships and they realize that this is what they actually need to do, all it takes is one person in that equation. It takes one person to put their ego in check, go and kind of, subordinate their ego and start to work to build a better relationship based on trust, listen, influence, respect, and care. And when they do that, you see all of a sudden now they can have a positive relationship where they mutually support one another, where they get those things from someone that wasn't giving them before by giving them, certainly not by demanding them.
Yeah, what do you think are some of the barriers to building relationships? Because we know this is paramount. We know this is how important it is. And yet every problem people bring us, my first question, you mentioned this earlier, is how's your relationship with that person? And rarely do they see that as the issue in the situation. And almost always it's a strong component for why this problem exists. So what do you think our barrier is to building those relationships?
The biggest barrier is pretty much the barrier to everything, and that is ego. Ego is the biggest barrier to that, because what prevents me, if you come to me and you're like, hey, Leif, hey, I know we're going with this plan that you came up with, but what do you think about doing it maybe a little bit differently? I was thinking about this. This might be a good idea. And what's the barrier to me listening to you? What's the barrier to me being influenced by you? What's the barrier to me respecting, your opinion and you have a different perspective on things that may be valid, maybe better than, you might be seeing things that I'm not seeing. And the barrier is my ego. What does Jamie know? Oh, she thinks she knows better than me. I've done this longer than her. I know better. Now she thinks she's smarter than me and she wants to come in and just make some changes. This is my ego. Instead of actually just saying, oh, you see the world a little bit differently? I'd love to hear about it, Jamie. Talk me through how you'd like to do that. And now, because I'm willing to listen to you, you're more willing to listen to me if I say, you know what, Jamie, I thought through that, but I think this might be the better way to do that. And because I listened to you, because I was open to your ideas, you're much more open to now the way that I maybe had planned to do it. Influence is the same way too, and that's one that people struggle with. We hear this over and over and over again where, I'll hear people say that, hey, the boss came up with a plan and, I told them this plan would never work, but they're just shoving this thing down our throats and making us do this. And I told them this is never going to work, but the boss just won't listen to me. He just won't listen to me. And so then, with the leader that's telling me that, I say, okay, well, how often are you pushing back on the boss's plan? How often are you pushing back on the boss's plan? And you know what the answer is? All the time. All the time. Every time the boss comes up with a plan, that person is saying like, yeah, it's never going to work. Yeah, it's never going to work. That's not a good plan. And so the minute that you're actually, when you have real feedback for the boss with some real concerns about the plan, the boss is not willing to listen to you because the boss is not allowing himself to be influenced by you because you have not allowed yourself to be influenced by the boss. So what I talked with leaders about like this is, hey, listen, what you need to do is say, hey, boss, that sounds good. Even if you think that plan's crazy, that sounds good. Let me go run the numbers on that. I'll put some data together and we'll come back to you with a plan on how that's going to work. And so I encouraged one particular leader to do this that was really having some frictions with his boss. He went and he thought this plan was crazy. He thought they didn't have the means to, accomplish the plan. The boss had thrown out some gigantic, marketing goals and, they're going to, growth goals. He was very skeptical they had the means to do that. But because we had a conversation around it, he listened to what I had to say. He said, okay, I'm going to allow myself to be influenced. He went and ran the numbers, went back to the boss and said, hey, boss, we ran the numbers on this. It's going to take, X $1 million investment in order to have that. We're going to need to hire about 25 more people. I think that's what we're going to need in order to make that happen. So I'm ready to execute. And the boss says, we don't have that. So maybe now I need to back my goals down. I need to think about our growth strategy and think about what we actually have the means to accomplish. But because this person had allowed himself to be influenced by his boss, and didn't just immediately push back on it, the boss was open to being influenced by him, and they were able to come up with a plan that was within their means to accomplish, and the company continued to grow.
One of my favorite stories is the story with Dave. Dave Burke was at an event, and during the break, this guy comes up and he asks him a very specific question about flying. And Dave Burke is arguably one of the most qualified pilots in the world. He can answer this question. So he's kind of fascinated because this question was a very technical question. And he starts to give an answer from his perspective and his experience in flying. And the gentleman cuts him off and says, no, see, that's where you're wrong because the earth is flat. And no offense to those that believe the earth is flat, but for Dave, he's been in an airplane and he does not believe the earth is flat, but he realizes in this moment he's got two options. He can engage in this conversation and allow himself to be influenced, or he can, as Jocko calls it, he can engage in this and now be in a frictional argument with this gentleman. So he just simply listens. And this guy goes through a whole explanation for why the earth is flat. And he's got all these background. You can tell that this is something he champions regularly in conversations. And at the end of it, Dave simply says, hey man, thanks for sharing that with me. I've never heard it explained before. That was really fascinating. And the guy looked back at him and was like, wow, no one's ever responded like that before. All it took was Dave subordinating his ego that wanted to tell this guy he was wrong and explain his perspective and his opinion and just listen to what he had to say and allow himself to be influenced. Dave didn't walk away from that conversation now believing that the earth was flat, but he walked away from that conversation having built a little bit of that trust with this individual that was going to matter. And this guy's going to go on and talk about Dave in a way that I think is positive because he was expecting him to likely come back back in this frictional way, the way that many people probably do. And yet that is what I remember when I think about building relationships, is that sometimes we can engage and allow ourselves to be influenced, even if we don't agree wholeheartedly with what we're talking about here. We're prioritizing the relationship over being right.
This concept of relationships it's the most basic thing. As you said, it's the first law of combat, the very first law of combat, as we call them, the laws that every team has to follow. Cover, move, simple, prioritize and execute, decentralized command. Cover, move, the very first one is based on the power of relationships, and yet it's one that people struggle with so often. And I think anytime that you interact with another human being, you need to think about, is this improving my relationship, or is this damaging my relationship with this person? So if I'm thinking about that as we're having a conversation, as we're interacting, it enables me to really think strategically about what I'm trying to do. My goal is to try to improve relationships with people. Because something that Jocko said a few years ago that really stuck with me, anytime you form an antagonistic relationship with another human being, that never helps you. And it really doesn't. It doesn't help you. There are people that you might think, we've seen this over and over again with the companies we work with. They walk away from a job, and they walked off the job and kind of told the boss to shove it and take this job and shove it, and it felt good at the time. And then all of a sudden, guess what? That company has a merger, and now they have to work with those people again, or they encounter those people. I mean, the world is just very small. Now all of a sudden you have to reach back out and work with someone that you didn't realize was going to be your customer down the road, or you really needed someone to step back in and do something for you. So the world is small. It is based on relationships. You need to try to form the best relationships that you can with everybody that you encounter.
The best explanation I think I've heard is what we teach at Echelon Front around leadership capital. And I love the visual of it, that you have a bank and I have a bank, and every interaction that we have with one another is either a withdrawal or a deposit in that leadership capital bank. And what I always try to remind myself is I always try to think that I am in the red. I don't have enough leadership capital with this person. So every interaction I have with that other individual, my goal is to put a withdrawal into that leadership capital bank. So on the rare occasion, which it should be so rare that I have to make a withdrawal, I have to, put my foot down or move in a certain direction, or maybe go with a different plan, and I have to take any kind of withdrawal in that interaction, I've got enough there to sustain that relationship. But that should be at the very end of our efforts. Our goal should be, in every interaction, I want to put money in that bank, and I want to build up that bank strong enough that we can work together and we've both got this strong leadership capital with one another.
And I think you should assume that you have a lot less leadership capital in the bank than you think you do. You and I have worked together for a long time. It's real easy to be like, oh yeah, Jamie and I get along great. We've worked together for years. But if I go with the assumption that I have all this leadership capital in the bank, it's leadership capital is like anything. It's that credit card statement that comes at the end of the month. It's all those little small expenditures that add up to a big bill. And you're like, where did that come from? How did we spend this much money? It's those little small expenditures. So, every interaction, there's things that are happening that you may not even remember or think about, where you're pulling some of that leadership capital out of the bank and spending it. And you might be spending it unwisely, and those little transactions add up. So assume you have less than you do, and I think that will enable you to build better relationships with people.
It's also really important to remember that in order to build leadership capital, it takes consistent effort. And every time you put that withdrawal in, it's small withdrawals. And the first time you say something you didn't mean to say, you come down hard on them, you drop the hammer, whatever it might be, you react emotionally, you let your ego get in the way, those withdrawals are massive. So when we're putting deposits in, we need to make sure that that's a small everyday effort. And the one time we screw it up, that withdrawal is massive. So we've got to focus on the little ways that we can build capital over time.
And those little ways are important too. I mean, I definitely, there's times where I felt like, hey, if I could plan a vacation, a kid-free vacation with me and my wife, it's a very rare thing. We have young kids at home, and I would get all this leadership capital in the bank. But I've seen that, look, that's great. Those things are great. You should absolutely do those things. But I've seen that you can gain leadership capital certainly over time much quicker by just the little things. Like she feels really stressed. She has a bunch of stuff going on at work. So, hey, I can just volunteer to go grab the kids from school, or take that off her plate, or take them to the office with me, or just whatever I can do to help out. it seems like a small thing in my mind, but it goes a long way, I think, to acquire some leadership capital.
For all the husbands out there, if you want to gain some leadership capital, see a need, fill a need. Don't ask, what do we have a plan for dinner? Say, hey, I've got a plan for dinner. Those things go massive. You build up so much leadership capital in those little interactions. So that's some good advice for the husbands out there.
Noted.
So what happens then? We have people building relationships. Now we do have strong relationships. At Echelon Front, I look at our teams. We've got multiple different departments and teams, really strong relationships. And that's a beautiful thing. But what happens when those strong relationships potentially impact or create silos within an organization? And how do we manage that piece of it?
Yeah, I think there's a dichotomy to everything. And, this is why Jocko and I wrote this book, Dichotomy of Leadership, as a follow-on to Extreme Ownership, because I think these are the things that people struggle with. You can take anything like even building relationships, which is a really, really good thing that you should be focused on. You can take that too far in one direction or the other. And where we see that happen, right? Silos in an organization are a terrible thing. You don't want silos in an organization, because if we have this team and they've got really tight relationships inside those teams, but now they've got so close relationships inside those teams, everybody outside is the enemy, and they're working against everybody else. And these are two departments inside an organization that should be supporting each other, should be helping each other. That's a problem. Cover move, this first law of combat that's based on the power of relationships. Really, as I said, it means it's not about you, it's about the overall team, the greater team, and the overall mission. And we see that a lot, where you go into particularly an organization, let's say like a SWAT team at a police department, and you go in and you talk to them about this concept of cover and move, and you say, hey, how are we doing there? And they're like, we're awesome. We got great teamwork across the organization. Our team is awesome. I love these guys. I can count on these guys. We have an outstanding team. But you know what? Our admin department sucks, and dispatch doesn't give us the right information. And the chief and the senior leadership, they're a bunch of politicians. They don't know what's going on down here in the front lines. And so they clearly don't understand the concept of cover and move, which we actually have to teach them, that it's not just about you and your immediate team. You got to, because they have so strong relationships inside that team, it actually prevents them from, it's creating a silo, because the people that are outside of those relationships feel like that's a clique and they're on the outside. And so if you and I have a great relationship, you and I have a really strong relationship, that's awesome. We should have that. But if other people on the team feel like, we're a clique and they're outside of it, well, that's not good. That's not good for relationship building. And that causes silos, and that can be a problem.
And silos are pretty natural in an organization, because we have departments and teams. Like, they're already sort of created. We have to be intentional to break those silos down. I was on site with a client, and we were doing a workshop, and it was just the sales team for this client. And we got to the open Q&A, and somebody had mentioned this challenge they were having, because the sales team had pressure on them to roll out this new product and to get sales going, pre-orders for this new product. But they were frustrated and had a ton of friction. You could feel it in the room, because IT hadn't delivered on their piece of the software that would allow them to get these pre-orders in the system. And so I was asking some earnest questions, trying to understand and help them navigate this. And this wasn't a trap. You know how sometimes we ask questions and it's a little bit of a trap? This was a legitimate question. I was like, hey, why is IT behind? Like, what's causing them to be behind in delivering on this deadline? And the room was quiet. And I was like, hold on. No one here understands or knows why IT hasn't delivered on their piece of the project. Not one of them knew why. So turns out the sales team, because they wanted to mitigate, IT didn't deliver on their piece, screw them, we're going to go ahead and get this going anyways, we got to get these pre-orders. They created an Excel system in order to get these pre-orders in, because they had determined IT wasn't going to keep us from reaching our goal. Turns out, after this meeting, they went back, asked the right questions, built those relationships, broke down the silo, had a conversation to find out why IT was behind. And it was a third-party contractor who was behind on their piece, which was causing IT to be behind on their piece. Those things happen. And ultimately, what was determined is that if they had just had a conversation before, the IT team could have helped them come up with what that Excel should look like. So when the system was up and running, the import to that system was going to be good to go. All this would have taken to resolve probably 3 or 4 weeks of friction and conflict between these two teams was if leadership on either of those teams had gotten together and had a conversation, had recognized, hey, we're over here, we're sales, you guys are IT, we have to work together in order to accomplish the mission. One conversation would have solved that. They could have worked together to solve for the bigger problem.
That's a great example of the power of relationships. I think what leads us down that path is you can't assume sinister intent on the part of someone else. And I think there's something we fall into. If I assume sinister intent on your part, hey, Jamie is, I did my part of the project. Jamie's working on her part of the project. I got mine done. She didn't get her part of the project done. Well, she's just trying to sabotage this, or she's just not working hard enough, or, this is all her fault. Whereas you may actually have some real issues going on. Maybe you have some priorities that you're working on that are actually a higher priority than this project. So I need to just check in with you. Hey, Jamie, is everything okay? What's going on? I can't just assume like, hey, Jamie, you didn't get your part of the project done. And when you jump to those kind of conclusions, you can't build relationships with people. If we're all waiting for you to show up to the meeting and you walk in 10 minutes late, and we're like, hey, nice of you to show up here, Jamie. We're just assuming that you just took your sweet time and because you don't care about wasting everyone's time. Whereas there may be some real reasons. You may have stopped to help, some injured person in a car accident on the way here. Things that were, hey, great, I'm glad you did that. I want that to take priority over what we're about to talk about here. We can wait for a few minutes. So if someone is falling behind, if someone is not delivering in the way they should, what you should do is say, hey, is everything okay? Can I help you? Is there something I could take off your plate? Hey, I got my part of the project done. I've got a little more extra bandwidth. Let me help you out with this. And if you do that, you're going to build a better relationship with someone, because guess what? At some point in your life, you're going to need that help from someone else, if not that very person. And so that's how you build better relationships. You can't assume sinister intent on the part of someone else.
100%. And as we get ready to close this out, I also want to remind people to not neglect the relationships that matter the most, because we have to be very intentional in building relationships in our professional world. That is something we've talked a lot about today. Break down those silos, work cross-functionally, get outside of your immediate team and build those relationships. Don't forget it when you go home. Just because those relationships are already established, they are the most critical relationships in your life. So make sure you're intentional on building and maintaining strong relationships within your family too. And with that, our immediate action drill for today is for everyone to take a moment and to think about that one relationship in your life right now that you need to improve. And then put together a 30-day action plan for what you're going to do to go and either build, maintain, or in really dire situations, fix a relationship that is going to be critical to the ultimate accomplishment of the mission.
And I'll give you some guidance on who that should be as you conduct this immediate action drill. The person on that list that you would put at the absolute bottom of the person that you want to reach out to and build a better relationship with, that's who you should do that with. The person that you have the most frictional relationship with, that person at work that you can't get along with, your spouse that you think, wronged you and needs to come and apologize. These are things that if somebody that you've got a frictional relationship with, again, all it takes is one person, and that person is you. When you take ownership of that, go and build a better relationship with that person, put together that 30-day action plan, and it will make a massive difference in your life, and it will enable you to lead and win.
Find us on YouTube or wherever you like to listen to podcasts, and do all the things you're supposed to do. Like, subscribe, share, leave us a review, but most importantly, send us the leadership challenges that you're facing right now so we can target our next episodes to helping you understand how to apply the principles of extreme ownership to solving those challenges.
Check out our free resources at echelonfront.com, or you can take the next step and join the Extreme Ownership Academy, our online training platform, where we go deeper on these principles and teach you how to apply them in your business and in your life.